Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Emotional Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Thompson, founder of EI Evolution, and I am super excited to take you on this incredible journey. We're going to be exploring the transformative world of emotional intelligence and empathy, guided by some truly remarkable humans and their fantastic four-legged friends. In each episode, we'll dive into inspiring and heartwarming stories about our beloved canine companions. We'll discover the unique and magical bonds we share with our dogs and uncover the profound lessons they teach us about understanding and managing our emotions. From tales of loyalty and love to moments of learning and growth, our furry friends have so much to offer when it comes to enhancing our emotional intelligence. We'll also discuss practical tips and insights on how to cultivate empathy and emotional awareness in our daily lives, inspired by the natural wisdom of our dogs. So sit back and relax, maybe even with your playful pup by your side, and join us for an enriching experience that celebrates the incredible ways dogs help us connect more deeply with ourselves and others. Welcome to the Emotional Intelligence Podcast. So, in the words of Monty Python, now time for something completely different. My next guest doesn't have a dog right now, but wrote something quite provocative on LinkedIn. I've known John for quite a while. He's an author of an incredible book, The Human Experience. Let's bring him in. John, how are you?
Oh, great. It makes it sound like I'm kind of in between dogs, doesn't it? Like when you're in between jobs or in between relationships. I'm good, but have slight dog envy, I think, at the moment, yeah.
But I think the point here is that you don't have a dog. I know that your family, I think your in-laws have got a dog.
Yeah.
But you wrote something on LinkedIn about a robotic dog, which we'll come on to in just a second. But when I read that, I just thought, oh my gosh, he's done it again. He's encapsulated through a story exactly what the being of that animal means in perspective of technology and AI and everything. But I'm gonna invite you to say a bit about yourself, and then we'll move on to this story, because people are listening probably thinking, what is she talking about? So John, tell us a bit about you first.
It's quite a strong opening, isn't it? Yeah, so I'm John, managing partner at the foundation. So we're a customer growth consultancy that works with organisations all around the world on helping them understand their customers better and creating better ways to be valuable to them, really. So I've been doing this 10 years, spent time before that in banking. I've got a family, 2 little boys, as you say, in-laws with a beautiful dog, and based in King's Cross, but work around the world. But that's kind of the non-dog part of my life.
So you wrote this incredible book, which a human experience, we've all been talking about it in the customer experience world, for the ability you have in describing what it is to be human and the effort that humans put into customer experience. And really, why wouldn't we do it this way all the time? It's, some of the stories that you tell are funny, but also quite ridiculous. And that's the thing, I think, this area that you've carved out is the ambassador for the human. And when you wrote the article on LinkedIn about the robotic dog, you did it again, you encapsulated that. So for those guys that are listening, could you just talk us through what you wrote and why it was so provocative?
Yeah, and thank you. You're always so generous with your words, Sandra. I really appreciate it. I feel like I need to speak to you every day. It gives like great feedback. But yeah, it was really a thought experiment, I suppose, because we've had so much about AI in the last year or so. And the question was, if you could have a robot dog that, looked like a dog, acted like a dog, behaved like a dog when it was around you, that felt like a dog, that had kind of real dog fur, that to all intents and purposes was a dog, would you have one? Like, would you like it? Would you think that could replace a real dog? Because, of course, the advantage of a robot dog is that you don't have to walk around after it, picking up its poo. You don't have to train it. It's not going to leave hairs everywhere. And have a bit of an allergy, which is maybe one reason we haven't quite got a dog yet. So the thought experiment was, would you have one? And most people came back and said no. In fact, most people came back and said no, absolutely not. And I think it was because what I put in that post, it was actually inspired by Paul Bloom, who's an amazing psychologist who writes some incredible books. And he wrote a post on exactly this, on this kind of humanity. And he talked about this scientific theory of biophilia, which has been around for quite a while. I think his name was Edward Wilson, the person that came up with it. I've referenced it in the LinkedIn post. I might need to check that. But this biophilia it describes an innate, that humans, it says, humans have an innate affinity for living things. And we have a tendency to seek connections with nature and with other forms of life. And that is why something like a robotic dog, for most people, can never replace a real dog, because we know it's not a living thing, because we know it's not a connection, it's not a form of life, it's not a part of nature. And the fact that is there means that we will never connect with it in the same empathetic way that we do when we're having a conversation, an experience with a real dog.
And when I read it, I just thought that visualization of coming home to a robotic dog that has been pre-programmed with all of the things, and it's learned all of the things it needs to do, and then you go to give it a cuddle and it knows what to do and it programs to shake or whatever it is. I mean, there was part horror, part upset, part, oh my God, he's onto something, because the fluid, reactive, micro things that these creatures do, their own characters, their own immediate responses to the complexities of what we are. I just thought this is a brilliant, of course, metaphor for what's going on in technology and what we think it's capable of versus what it really is. And I think you're definitely onto something there with that visualization, because I can imagine so many people must have gone, absolutely not, and all listed all their reasons why.
Yeah. I think this is it. And I think there's a couple of interesting questions here. So one is about, does it make a difference if you know or not? And that's a really interesting thought experiment, because if you don't know and you can't tell, then do you just end up reacting in a way as if you believe it was true, or can you tell? And of course, all of this is on a long time horizon, because there might be one version of a robotic dog in 5 years that's rubbish, and there might be another version in 100 years that's incredible, and you can't tell the difference. So, you know, it could be that these things come over time. One of the most crucial differences is about whether the dog acts in a random way, because actually this is one of the challenges that AI has, I think, or when you're trying to, represent a living thing, is that you kind of, the AI learns in quite a logical way. You know, when this happens, this happens. Whereas what we know about humans and animals is that they're very random. And the fact that they're random, the fact they have mood swings, the fact that they respond in different ways or ways you don't expect, that is what makes you human. That's what creates serendipity. That's what creates these moments of connection. That's what creates moments of smile. You know, most laughing is because something unexpected has happened. You know, that's why great comedians, the punchline is like setting up a situation, and the punchline is saying something that is the opposite of the situation. It's the same with little kids. You know, when they say something you're not expecting, that's what's really funny. And with animals, it's when they run around like crazy in a circle and you don't know why, but it's really cute. Or just when you need them, you know, they can sense, you know, something's going on. So there's a big element around that. And then that last point I made, I think, is the second element, which is around the way the animal, the way the dog in this case would respond to you. So can it sense, without you saying anything, how you're feeling? And I think dogs have quite a good innate feeling about this. You know, they know when you're sad, they know when you need a cuddle, or at least I believe they do. You kind of project on different dogs. But and then again, can AI do that, or a robotic dog do that? Would it rely on you needing to kind of give it a cue? You know, I'm not feeling that great, and then it comes over. So there's all these nuances. And that is what I think is that natural connection that Paul Bloom's talking about, this kind of nature, this connection, this randomness within everything else that goes on, that creates that empathetic connection, rather than it just being a very transactional relationship where you can stroke it at the time you want to stroke it.
So I understand that, and I'd like to add something on as well, which is the chemistry. You know, this robotic dog would need to have such incredible sense of smell.
Mm.
It would need to sense cortisol, stress. It would need to sense oxytocin and serotonin, because what we
Yeah.
know about, and I've talked about this on a couple of the other podcasts around, we've got dogs now that can smell certain types of cancers when you're about to have an epileptic
Hmm.
fit, when you have a seizure about to, all sorts of things they can pick up through the chemical changes in us biologically. So, to your point about humans connecting with living things, however they manifest,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
wonder how that can be replicated in such a way, because really, aren't you just making another complete animal if you have to have all of those factors that create this
Yeah.
connection that goes on behind the scenes, as it were?
I think that's right. I think what you're really talking about is whether there's just like a third type. There's like a human and a dog, and then there's another creature you can create.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of different elements to that as well. One is that a lot of AI at the moment is trained on human language based on what's on the internet. But we don't
Mm,
really understand that much about dogs.
yeah.
There's so much about dogs and loads of animals. I mean, man, animals are magical. We often
Yeah.
say all of the things that superheroes can do in the Marvel movies. There's some animal somewhere that can do it. A
And
fly that can jump 1,000 times its height, something that can, there's
yeah.
cuttlefish that can change gender. There's halfway through their kind of, because there was one, this is kind of a complete tangent, but there was one planet Earth where this cuttlefish was a male and it wanted to try and get with the female that was with another male. So it changed gender to be a female, went underneath the other male and then changed back again. And it just like, how can you do it? So animals have got all these incredible things that we can't replicate and we can't know how they work. And so
Mm,
it's almost like creating a Tamagotchi. Like, do you create another type of thing? Now, what is interesting, I think, is distinguishing, like, Sandra, you and I were doing our customer experience world, different segments,
mm,
different types of dogs. So actually, if you look at a sheepdog and a guide dog,
mm,
is there a robotic version of those two things that
yeah.
could be more effective than a sheepdog and a guide dog and be easier to train? Because guide
Yeah.
dogs is a very expensive way of training things. I don't know enough about either of those worlds to know,
Yeah.
but there'd be an argument to say you could see that maybe there's some kind of device for someone that's blind or visually
Mm,
impaired that they
mm,
could wear that is able to help them
mm,
very, very accurately map the world around them. That means
yeah.
they don't need the dog. You could see that. And you could see potentially the same in farming with sheepdogs potentially. Again, is there some kind of, but then you're looking at the different use cases, if you like, for
That's
dogs,
it.
because that's different to the one that you've got because you want an emotional connection, the one that you want to
Yeah.
help calm your children, calm your family. So again, there's lots of nuances in that into what's the problem or what's the outcome you want and
Mm,
what's the right type of animal, real or robotic, that can help resolve that, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So I think what we're talking about here are particular types of species of dogs who have been bred for particular roles, and how those particular job types, roles, could be replaced with other things that aren't the
Yeah.
animal. And I think that's
Yeah.
where I think that's where, without getting too heavy about it, the kind of the soul, the consciousness, the presence of a being, the companionship, the it being so much more than the thing that they're there primarily to do.
Mm.
That's when the very essence of what it is to be human, surely, or a being rather, comes in as the question.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't know if you've seen this week the new AI product called Friend,
All right,
which has
no,
been talked about on LinkedIn a little bit,
okay,
and it's like I don't know if you're a fan of Black Mirror, but it's a bit like there's
yeah,
one episode in Black Mirror where you can record all your memories and play them back. So this product's been launched. It's called Friend. It's like a
right,
little button that sits on you. It records all of your interactions and then you can text it back and forward, and you can speak to it about your interactions.
Wow.
A bit like having like a human Tamagotchi. So you can kind of, go and go and buy something in the shop, and you can say, God, I thought that person was a bit rude. What do you think? And the little AI thing can kind of reply back to you and say, yeah, I thought she was a bit rude too. I didn't think you deserved that. You can sit there and have a conversation. You can gossip with it. You can have this relationship with it. And when I heard about it, I thought, this has got to be a parody. Like, this cannot be real. But it is real. It's a real product that's been pillared online because, and then there's a long punchline to this, I suppose. It's kind of been pillared online for being kind of completely soulless, for replacing like a real friend with just this thing that's always going to agree with you or share with you. But the killer part of this for me, Sandra, is I went and looked into the background of this. And the guy that's invented it did an interview, and he said, where did it come from? And he said, I was in a high-rose hotel in Japan on business, and I've never felt so lonely. Never felt so lonely. And I just wished I had someone to speak to, and this device would have really helped me. And my reaction to that was, we'll go to the pub. Like, get out of the hotel if you're feeling that lonely, and go to the pub. Or like phone one of your friends, message a real person. And I know some people are more introverted than extroverted, so it might be worth different people. But it felt odd to me that the response of someone saying, I feel really lonely, what can I do about it, was create a fake device with a fake person that doesn't exist, that you can pretend to not be lonely, rather than actually go and connect with real people to stop being lonely. I think it's a fascinating area.
It is, and I worry about that. Why do I worry about that? So I think I worry about that because I hope that whatever this device is throws in the odd spanner, the odd grenade every so often of someone else's opinion and something else, because otherwise we're going to end up with zombies, aren't we? Because everyone's going to be just hearing themselves, agreeing with themselves, and that isn't about growth. That's probably about stagnation, depending on what age you intervene with this particular type of technology. Wow.
Yeah. And it's about, I think, deep down knowing that you have people that do really genuinely care for you. I do think there's a surface level element, which actually social media can drive in itself. But deep down, does that dog, does that friend, the friend on your chest, do they really care, or are they just parroting back? And that's where the thought experiment comes in, I suppose, ultimately, of does it matter? If you feel like they care, does it matter that they don't? It feels dystopian, but it's an interesting kind of breakdown, I think, in terms of what really matters, which brings us back around to the dogs and the post of, I think you want a real dog because I think you want to know that it really cares. I think you want to know it's really there, it really exists, it's got faults and frailties, and it feels great, and it's going to be ill, and it's going to pass away one day, and it's going to be happy while you're here. But you have all of these kind of ups and downs in relationships, like you always do.
That's right.
Rather than having something that's just kind of very functional, very perfect. And actually, it's that messiness around life that I think makes life, rather than the kind of perfection and the functional nature of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just to be a button for a minute, I agree with you, my friend. Yeah, for sure. Wow. And so so again, when you were talking about the robotic dog, when we're thinking about this particular type of technology, doesn't it come back to where is the governance? Where is the future? What do we want as humans for this technology to become? Do we want it to go down that route? Do we have a choice about whether it goes down that route? And is there a market for these replacements that seem to satisfy people who don't necessarily need, or to your point, don't even know it's not a real thing? I don't know. I don't think there's a question in there. I think that's just a statement to say, what are we going to do?
Yeah, the thing is, though, I think we're already living in that situation with mobile phones and social media. Where I think we've already got huge rises in teenage mental health issues and anxiety and depression. We've got huge rises in teenage loneliness. part of that is driven by people having relationships online through social media, choosing to spend time there than with real people and real friends. So believing, and it's very dangerous in your career as well, to believe that this kind of 2,000 people online really care about you or your friends or the priority. You know, I sometimes get a bit annoyed with my friends if I'm like, you know, I don't know if you're out in the pub and they're WhatsApping someone else. You're like, well, you're just here with me, so let's just have this conversation. Or if you're WhatsApping a friend about something that's on telly and then they don't reply, but then you see them posting on Twitter about it, you're like, but you know, actually have a proper conversation with me about it rather than this. But the allure, the draw of the big crowd and the big audience and the social is much stronger. But ultimately, it's quite empty. It's quite soulless. So all of these questions we've got about AI, I think, are the questions we're currently grappling with. And Jonathan Haidt books, The Anxious Generation, is worth a read on this. All of these problems are things we're grappling with now, because social media, you know, most of the people on social media you don't know, they don't really care in a way. You can't have deep connection with them. Most of the time you're choosing to spend on your phone rather than being out with real people. It's a lesser form of connection, a less satisfying form of connection. It drives loneliness, it drives mental health issues. So actually we kind of need to resolve that first. And that's really the case studies where there has been no governance, where there has been no regulation. You know, I saw someone say, you know, during the recent election here, but also for the upcoming one in America, why is AI not the number one topic everyone's talking about? Because, you know, if I said to you now, well, and by the way, I'm not an AI pessimist, so this isn't necessarily my view, but to play devil's advocate, if someone said, okay, we've got a war coming in the next 3 years, it's potentially going to, you know, stop half the people working and increase levels of loneliness, that'd be the number one topic that everyone's talking about for the election. And that's some people believe that's what you're looking at with AI. I don't believe that, but some people believe that's what you're looking at with AI. So, you know, surely there has to be regulation. And we only need to look back at phones and social media to kind of go, the problems we've got now, democratic problems as well we've got now, are because of this. So we've got to fix that, but also we've got to stop it happening again whilst we're fixing that. Otherwise we're just making it even worse.
So if we think for a second about the role of empathy and emotional intelligence to try and sort this out, what is the role of empathy and emotional intelligence, if there is one, to sort this situation out, John?
Well, in terms of the AI or social media and phones?
I think first of all, let's talk about social media and phones and getting the balance right. What might the intervention of emotional intelligence and empathy, how could that potentially be the antidote for social media and mobile phones? Let's tackle that one first.
I think that's it. I think it's about connection. I think it's about real visceral connection. You know, nearly all of us now, we get so much information through data. At work, we get information through PDF and PowerPoint. All of it lacks real depth, real connection. You know, there's lots and lots of experiments have been done where you get two people that have got, you know, polarized political views. If you put them in a room together, they end up having a really good conversation. Because they just sat, they can see the human, they can see each other is, you know, not coming from a bad place. They just want to understand each other's beliefs. When that happens online, that emotional intelligence strips away, the language becomes, and the nuance becomes much harder to read. In fact, sometimes it's just done deliberately. No one cares about the person on the other end of the message or of the tweet or of the X of the post. So then, you know, that's where hatred really starts to boil up and groups can start hating each other without having ever met. You know, but it so rarely happens when everyone's in the same room, which incidentally is why I think our democracy in the UK of having everyone in a very small chamber is really a really powerful thing. So that connection, real connection with real people, real humans, getting more people in rooms together, having more direct conversations, trying to resist what is, you know, just kind of online debates. If you ever feel yourself getting into an online argument, step out of it. You know, I'm a big fan of phone calls. I always say to the team here at the foundation where we work, you know, if you're getting back and forth a lot on email, just pick up the phone. You'll have it sorted in 2 minutes. You know, but it becomes a slightly harder thing to do, but ultimately it's much better in the long run. So I think it is connection for me in as many different ways as possible.
I agree with you. I think that the reality of another person in in the physical space, or even the voice, because the voice is incredibly potent as an emotional organ, whatever you want to call it, a vehicle. You can't, it's like it brings a different perspective. It brings all of the perhaps protection you might get from being remote and not face to face. It kind of brings that down. And we are definitely, as a species, designed to take on facial expression and nuances in tone of voice and language spoken. So I think that there's definitely something in that. And to kind of bring it back to real dogs for a minute, a couple of the interviews that I've done, we've talked about the fact that dogs do bring people together. You know, I remember walking my dad's dog along the coast when Dad couldn't walk him, and these people would be saying, "Oh, hi, Smudge. Where's your dad?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm his daughter," and we get chatting away, and then the next person would be like, "Oh, hi, Smudge." You know, all of this connection, and it's about the dog, so it's quite safe, but you end up making friendships, having allies, you know, being part of a community. There are people that I know that have got Italian Spinonis, and they go every year to a big park where all these other Italian Spinonis are. So again, through, I suppose, a bit like kids, you create human connection through the conversation about the dog. And that's a real dog. So I think that, again, they're a brilliant device to break down, you know, to break the ice, to be the center of attention, which is a safe way to connect with humans. I mean, what would you say to that?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I guess it's kind of well known, isn't it, in terms of kind of empathy, that you try and find something in common. You know, you really early on try and find that common ground, an area you can agree on, that you can build your relationship from. And, you know, I've often observed, you know, from a distance, I suppose, with my in-laws dog, or if I'm ever out, happen to be walking it, how, you know, people that, if you don't have a dog, you just walk past them. Like, you know, you never say anything. But if you've got a dog, then you've immediately got something in common. And, you know, it's the same conversation every time, let's be honest. It's, oh, you've got a dog, or what breed, or what color? My cousin's got a dog similar, or a different color. Where'd you get it from? You know, always, but it's just that moment of connection. And then that might just develop and develop. I mean, interestingly, when I walk to, when I went to the station every morning, I passed kind of a few different people. One person who, and they're all people I don't know, but the one person who, without fail, we always say hello to each other, is the guy walking 3 dogs every day. And even though I don't have a dog with me, but there's something about the presence of them being there that makes it more acceptable, more open, just to have a conversation, that makes it feel right. You know, I do a little smile at one of his dogs, he'll probably jump up at me or something. And it's just that moment, it's that connection, it's that common element, that thing you've got in common, that I think then allows the relationship to develop and build. And again, go back to the point before, you know, if you had 2 people on opposite sides of the political spectrum, but they both had dogs, then you're starting from a point of commonality. Well, then you both like dogs, so let's talk about that, rather than your points of difference. And as the famous line goes, we've all got far more in common than we have our differences.
100%. I completely agree with you. And what quickly comes to mind is when I've got on the tube, and you know, no one looks at each other, no one's doing anything. There might be like being a bit grumpy, whatever. As soon as a dog comes into the carriage, you can see everyone smiling, people curious, people want to like ask if they can stroke the dog. It's another change of energy, I think. And again, to your point about connection, I can see it. Marvelous. Any final things you want to add in there, John, before we finish up?
No, I think it's just such a fascinating area. I mean, we were talking just before about how calming the dog is on my family. I've got 2 little boys. They're super energetic, charging around all the time. But as soon as the dog comes in, it creates this kind of calming presence. And I guess the thing for me is I don't understand it, but it feels entirely natural. It feels like something's happening in nature that's creating that, because they've got plenty of robotic toys, they've got plenty of other things, but nothing ever makes them act like that. But the very presence of that dog walking in changes something in the atmosphere, in the environment, that completely calms them. And for that reason alone, I think we'll probably end up getting a dog at some point.
What did I say? In between. So there's your in-laws, and perhaps one day you might have the paw prints coming into your house. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Great to see you, John. Thank you so much, and keep doing all the human experience stuff and all the incredible stories that you share. It's brilliant. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for having me on, and I'm always happy to be on any podcast that starts with a Monty Python reference as well. So you won me at that point.
So that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in. If we've not connected already, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there most days. You'll find me under CXEI Sandra. And also, if you want to find out a bit more about my work, then you can pop along to my website, www.eievolution.com. One final thing, and in the spirit of customer experience and feedback, I wonder if you might consider leaving a review on Spotify. I'll leave that one with you. So until the next time, be well and be pawsome. Ta-ra!